This podcast is intended to provide information for educational purposes only and to serve as a starting point for you to have a conversation with your personal physician. Nothing stated on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Consult with your physician before undertaking or changing any treatment plan.
Welcome back to the Pound of Cure Weight Loss Podcast. We are here with another patient story episode, so we are very, very excited to talk with Kelly today. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good to see you. Don't you love Kelly's Michigan accent? I miss the Michigan accent so much.
And it's funny because I live in Texas now, so
Do people call you out for it? Do they
All the
ask
time.
where you're from?
all the time.
Pack.
hmm
And Arizona doesn't really have an accent, don't you think? I feel like we don't
But
really have an accent here.
Maybe to people who have, to us, a thick accent, it's like a West Coast accent kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So,
So anyway, Kelly, I know that you have quite an interesting story to share. You're in our nutrition program right now, but you're not a new patient of Dr. Weiner. So share with us a little bit about your weight loss. Maybe to kind of start, if you don't mind, let's hear a little bit about what brought you to the decision to first seek out bariatric surgery as an option.
Okay. So probably from the time I was 10, I struggled with my weight. I was always on some sort of diet, whether it was low fat or, low calorie. I exercised. I did all the right things that I thought I was doing at the time. And my weight would go up and down and up and down. Whatever I would lose, I'd gain it back. And I just struggled. And every year I progressively got heavier and heavier and heavier. And I finally got to the point after having 2 kids, I was over 400 pounds. And I was tired of up and down and up and down. And so I started doing research about bariatric surgery. And ultimately, I was scared of having a bypass because my mom had had an intestinal bypass in the 1970s. And she had a lot of complications from that. And it ultimately, she ended up dying of kidney failure that was caused by her intestinal bypass and poor nutrition and malnutrition and things like that. And so I was kind of scared. And so I went in to see Dr. Weiner. We worked at the same hospital in Detroit. And I went in and I said, I want a lap band. And he said, I don't think that's the right option for you, but if that is your choice and that is your decision, I will put a lap band in you. And hindsight's 2020, because I wish I would have had a bypass then, but I didn't. So anyway, I had the lap band. I lost just over 100 pounds and then proceeded to gain back about 130 pounds. And I, went back on the yo-yo dieting train.
Can I ask you a question, Kelly?
Sure.
When you lost back that 130 pounds, talk me through some of the emotional state you were in. Was there a lot of kind of like self-loathing? Did you blame this on yourself? Or did you maybe look at that this was the band and the band didn't do what it was supposed to do? Where was your focus at that time?
I felt like I failed. I
Yeah,
felt like I failed my band. I got this tool and
right.
I felt like a failure because, I really got into it and I was eating healthy and I thought I was doing the right things. And it just, I felt like a failure that
I had a suspicion that
that's
maybe
right.
some of that. Yeah. I mean, because that's what I hear over and over, and people tell me their story, and I think the amount of self-criticism I hear from my patients on a daily basis, And like so many times I'll dig in and they'll tell me the story and they'll be like, and then I couldn't control my appetite and I just let go of myself and it was my own fault. I shouldn't have done it, but it was my own fault. And I say, well, that period of rapid weight gain also coincided with you taking Depo-Provera shots, which cause massive weight gain. And so I actually think you had nothing to do with it. You got a shot and you gained weight from a shot. And I think in your situation, when I hear your story now, I hear the band did what the band did, which
Mm.
was it failed. And I look at this as the band failed you, not you failed the band. But I think, there's so many people when they struggle with weight regain and they, aren't, and we don't dig in deep enough to find the real root cause. The cause is almost never the patient. It's the medication. It's the surgery failing over time, which sometimes they do. It's an injury. It's a life event, a divorce, a death of a loved one. It's something along those lines. These are the factors that are most responsible for substantial periods of weight gain. And so I had a suspicion you'd say that. And I think
Mhm.
if anybody out there is listening and they've been telling themselves, oh, it was your fault, this was what you did, give yourself a break. First of all, it's not productive. It's not going to get you to do better somehow. And also, it's probably not accurate.
True story.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. Looking back, I worked really hard to take
Yeah.
off,
I'm sure
that,
you did.
and it came right back.
Yeah.
And, so then I felt like, okay, well, I failed at this. And I really wanted to be active and be able to run with my children. And so, so I kind of went back on the yo-yo dieting train and
Sure.
like, okay. And I again started doing more research and looked into why my mom had the medical problems that she had from her intestinal bypass.
Right.
Um, and I ultimately decided that I wanted to have a gastric bypass. So I came back to see you.
How many
And
years later was that from when you got your band to when you went back to see Dr. Weiner?
so I got my band in 2009 and I had my gastric bypass in 2017.
So a
So,
long time. There's a
so
lot of long period of,
yeah,
tough times in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And when I got my band, the day of surgery, I was 405 pounds.
Yeah.
And when I had my gastric bypass, I'm trying to remember, I was up to 440 at one point. And then I did all the pre-op stuff, and I think I got down to right around just under 400 before my gastric bypass. Um, but again, I did a lot of research and, because I didn't want to have the health problems. The whole point of it was to be able to
Of course. Of
not
course.
have the health problems. I had a hard time at work, when you're a registered nurse, being on your feet for 12 hours and you can't even take care of your patients. And I went through injury after injury. It was my knee, it was my ankle, it was this and that, running around at 440 pounds. It was tough. It was really tough. And so I came to see you to have a gastric bypass, and I it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life.
Yeah. That was a
Um,
revision at over 400 pounds. I mean, I probably, I normally say to patients, oh, this is nothing. You're going to do great. This is so easy. But a revision surgery at 400 pounds, that's a real deal. How was the surgery recovery for you?
it was actually not bad at all. My
Yeah.
gallbladder surgery was worse.
Yeah.
Um, and I, I did 17 laps in the hospital. I was like, I got to get up and move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as the weight started coming off, movement got a lot easier. And it was absolutely incredible. And by 2019, I was under 300 pounds for the first time in a very, very long time.
Wow.
Um, and then I got pregnant with my third son
Right.
at age 41. And yes, he was a much desired child. And so I had him, and then the weight just started peeling off because I was, you know, I changed my diet. I basically said if it doesn't come off of a tree, out of an animal, or out of the ground, I'm not going to put it in my mouth.
And that was
And
during the pregnancy?
yep. And
Yeah,
then
that
I
was smart.
continued that after.
Yeah.
And the weight just, I was negative 6 pounds when I delivered him.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And yes, when you get pregnant at 290 pounds and then you deliver at, 284. But then after I had him, I just was super active and I was eating, whole foods, and I got down to 170 pounds. And I haven't been 170 pounds since I was in middle school.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it absolutely changed my life. I can chase this little guy down like I couldn't with my older kid. I'm working on the nutrition part of it, because I got down, I maintained 170 for quite some time. And then I had skin removal surgery because I had a lot of loose skin. And then after that, I went to back to midnight shift, and I gained about 34 pounds, but I was snacking and I was not eating the way I know I can.
There you are, Kelly. The midnight shift, the disruption of your sleep-wake cycle causes weight gain. And so does having a child later in life. And that's why you gain the weight. And it's like it's just such a natural reaction to kind of go back to, well, and it was my fault and I did it. I mean, Zoe, have you ever snacked late at night?
Of course.
Yeah, me too. Pretty much everybody snacked late at night. Did you gain 34 pounds from it, Zoe? No. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, no one's eating perfectly. Very, very few people are eating perfectly. And so, there's always some other causes. If you told me what happens if I have a baby at 41 and then start working the night shift afterward, I'd be like, oh my God, you're going to gain a ton of weight, And so I think again, there, that it's so important that and that's why like so much of what I'm putting out there is so that people can look and recognize that it is their life circumstances that cause the weight gain, not generally their behaviors. I mean, behaviors I'm not saying they don't, but they're not the sole cause.
And generally looking at a graph of weight gain and loss over a lifetime. And usually it's like, okay, gaining weight through the first 20 years of life, let's say, and then maybe it's this, a little bit up through college and then a little bit down, and then it's okay, life event, maybe got married, and then you can see it kind of go up, and then and you can kind of like pinpoint these life events along the lines of having a child and then maybe going back to work and whatever the case may be, or the death of a loved one, and you can kind of like pinpoint these critical life events correlating with weight gain.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But like what Dr. Weiner said, I think it's so important that we as a society, as a culture, as a weight loss community, start to shift that mindset from, of course, there's an element of accountability and we all want to have self-awareness, but also recognizing that obesity is a disease and a lot of this is not your fault, just like Dr. Weiner just said. And we need to start shifting the language and the mindset, because that negative self-talk and that mindset that keeps us spiraling and reinforcing that negative mindset about ourselves, it is only perpetuating that issue, right? And so the more that we can pause in that moment and reframe it to, well, I had a child at 41 and I went back to the midnight shift, and I'm proud of myself for continuing to show up for my family and work on my habits and those different types of things, and just shifts how we're talking about these things.
Zoe, that whole story, your picture of the graph and the life events and everything like that, that just gave me a really good idea. We have this app coming out. I don't know, I'm pretty much obsessed with it. I almost feel like I'm pregnant with a child. It is my entire, like everything I've done since before I first met Kelly, honestly, in terms of our nutrition program, every video I've made, I've kind of taken all of that and kind of popped it into an app. And something, that we all of this kind of coincides too with AI, and I've learned a ton about AI, and we have an AI dietitian, but she's even more than that. She can answer med questions. But my thought was like, we need to have a way for you to be able to put your weights in throughout your life and track your whole weights from way back when. And a lot of people can really recall their weights at pretty much any time. But we also have a survey. Whenever a new patient comes in our office, there's a bunch of questions we ask. How many pregnancies have you had? How old is your youngest child? That gets us at like what Kelly, pregnancy later in life. What injuries have you had? When were they? And what medications do you think have caused weight gain? And kind of run people through a survey if they want. And they can kind of answer these questions. And the AI will be able to line up those events with the weight and perhaps point out some things about weight gain that may get to all of this that we've already been talking about, which is that weight gain, whether it's after a lap band, after a pregnancy later in life, after working the night shift, that there's usually an explainable cause.
Hmm. Definitely. So tell us about, maybe life in the last year or 2 years since you've been, let's say, maintaining where you're at. What does your lifestyle look like? What are your habits like? What is life like now?
It's night and day from what it used to be. You know, I didn't come home, I don't come from work and just want to lay out on the couch and die,
Yeah.
first of all. Um, but, I can go to work, I can work my 12-hour shift. I come home, I can run around the backyard with my son and my two dogs and my 11 chickens. And, I can just there are so many things that I couldn't do before physically that I can do now. I got to ride a horse for the first time in
Oh my
my
gosh.
whole life. And it was just such a wonderful experience. I don't have to look at a chair anymore and go, oh, no, I can't sit there. Is there one without arms?
Yeah.
Um, I don't I don't have to do that anymore. And the fact that my probably my most recent favorite moment and non-scale victory, my husband and I took our son to a water park,
Oh my gosh.
and Callan really wanted to go on the slide, the family slide, so all
Hmm.
of us could be in this big tube. And there was 6 flights of stairs to the top. And we climbed those 6 flights. We went down. This kid had the time of his life. I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie, it was really fun. And we
Of
found the
course.
bottom and we walked right back up there.
Oh wow.
I would have never been able to do that in my previous life, you
Right.
know? Um, Even one flight of stairs was so difficult and so exhausting. And I did 6 flights of stairs twice. And
Yeah.
it just my life is just night and day different. And I feel better. I look better. I went from wearing a 3X scrub top and a 5X bottom to a small top and a medium bottom,
Yeah.
which I, again, haven't seen this size since I was in middle school, like 7th grade.
Right.
And it just, you know, it's just amazing the things I can do now. And, my friends at work are like, Kelly, don't you ever sit down? And I'm like, no, I sat for 40 years. I'm done sitting. I want to get up. I want to run. I want to just enjoy life because I feel like I missed out on so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't I don't miss that life. And I'm so blessed to have the life that I have now.
And now you're making up for it by doing all of the fun things, riding on that side. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing specifically the non-scale victories in your life, because that's something that is those moments, those memories that you're making. They're so much more powerful. Yeah, seeing a low number on the scale is great, but that doesn't have the same impact.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it absolutely doesn't. And I am less focused on the scale. It's data collection, but it's not the end all be all for I just want to feel physically well and healthy. And, what I put into my body is what I'm going to get out in energy and and that's what I'm looking at now, as opposed to what is that number on the scale, because that doesn't account for, muscle gain. That doesn't account for it. It's not a great indicator.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your nutritional strategy now? What does that look like? Talk to us about eating after a gastric bypass. What I think you were 8 years out?
8 years out.
Yeah. So what does eating feel like? What does it look like? There's a lot of people, I had a patient today. He's like, so I hear after the surgery, you can only eat like half a taco. And I was like, whoa, I think, there's so much wrong with that statement. I don't even know where to begin. By the way, he has not yet met with Zoe. So
Oh, okay.
Zoe, we haven't, he has not had his meetings and all the pre-op teaching that we do. So I don't want in any way for that to reflect on Zoe. But I felt that's a conception out there. It's almost like you want to eat, but you can't. And that's not at all what patients are experiencing.
Okay, so honestly, aside from the immediate post-op period, soft foods, purees, all of those things, I can eat just like anybody else. And but it's more about what I put in my mouth. But I will tell you, one of the good side effects, in my opinion, if I eat something very processed, very greasy, very sugary, I don't like the way I feel after, and I don't like that. I don't like that feeling. And, it makes me feel like I'm having hot flashes. It makes me just feel yucky, for
Yeah.
lack of a better word. Um, but I can go out to a restaurant. I can go, have a family dinner. My portions are absolutely smaller, but it's not a half a taco. I could absolutely eat a taco, or I could absolutely, but like I said, now, it's, I'm focused way more on, what it is. Produce heavy diet versus, ultra processed diet,
Yeah.
because honestly, ultra processed foods make me feel like garbage. Um, Especially right after I eat them.
Yeah.
And am I going to say that I never eat a processed food?
Yeah.
No. But, if there's birthday cake, for, my little one, okay, I'm going to have a little bit of birthday cake. But I don't crave food the way I used to.
Mhm.
I've gone hours and hours and I'm like, oh, I don't think I've eaten yet today. I
Yeah.
need to go eat something.
And so
Now
you still have that 8 years out.
still 8 years out.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's just I don't think about food constantly. That food noise that people talk about. I don't have that food noise constantly like I did when I was 440 pounds.
Yeah.
Mm. I wanted to ask about your experience, looping back specifically to the birthday cake example. How would you say your interaction with those treat foods, not cheat, treat, right?
Yeah.
How would you say your interaction with like that eating experience, how you're able to be more mindful if you are with enjoying those treats now, and how that has played a role in your overall this long-term success that you've experienced versus maybe how you would have interacted with that birthday cake before maybe.
Oh, I would have absolutely eaten an entire piece of cake before, and I wouldn't have really had any ill effects from it. And now I don't look at the birthday cake and I'm like, oh, gotta have a big old piece of that. It's more so I might take a bite or two and I will enjoy it with my family, but the side effects that might come from that cake, I know are undesirable, and I don't want to feel like that. But so
Hmm.
it's very different because I know that it's not going to make me feel very good. Um, and I like to avoid things that don't make me feel good.
I'll tell
Yeah.
you something that really strikes me about everything that you're saying, and Zoe, I'm sure you're probably hearing the same things. If she was a GLP-1 success story, I feel like I'd hear exactly the same thing. And I think that's something that I picked up on very early on when we started prescribing the GLP-1 meds is that, and I'll even go back to kind of talking about where my first book came from. And you were truthfully a patient of mine before I even wrote my first book. But our nutritional plan came from me listening to patients tell me their story of what foods work and what foods don't, and
Mhm.
understanding that lowered set point was driving behavioral changes that facilitated weight loss. And if anybody could kind of make some of those behavioral changes, they could get that same set point effect, not to the same degree as a bariatric surgery, but we were able to use nutrition to lower that set point. And as soon as I started talking to my patients on GLP-1 meds, I was like, there it is, same story, hormonal weight loss. Same story, exactly. And I think that's the thing that we're really starting to put together in our practice is that this idea of nutrition, meds, and surgery is not this distinct silo, but really kind of a continuum of treatments for the hormonal disease of obesity. And I think, anybody who's out there who's taking GLP-1s listening is probably going to know exactly what Kelly's feeling,
Hmm.
because they're probably feeling almost the exact same thing. Bariatric surgery is a hormonal treatment. GLP-1s is a hormonal treatment. And when you do nutrition correctly, it's a hormonal treatment.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think about food in the way that I used to, not at
yeah.
all. You know, I I would eat anything that you put in front of me. I loved it to eat, clearly.
Yeah.
And now I pick and choose what I want to eat, um, because it makes me feel good. It
Yeah.
makes me feel good to eat that apple or that banana,
Yeah.
or,
I think,
I enjoy that feeling way, way more.
yeah.
And I
I think
crave
that,
that.
yeah. So that's the important piece. And I think, like you can only eat half a taco. That's not the story. The
No,
story, in dumping syndrome, people are like, well, I don't want dumping. Well, dumping isn't for every food.
no.
Dumping is for certain foods. And so when
Mhm.
you eat something and feel unpleasant afterward, it takes away your desire for it. There's something called the sauce bernaise phenomenon. And it's like kind of a Psych 101 thing that you learn about. And it was this guy, and it's all based on aversion therapy, I think, or when you have a really powerful negative experience, it takes kind of that one time, and you just, for the rest of your life, you do that. And, for lack of a better term, I still cannot smell tequila these days because of an experience I had in college.
Mhm.
And just I can't handle it. I know I can remember exactly that moment that I felt so terrible from tequila every time I smell it. And I don't know that I've had tequila since. But it's that same idea that you kind of have when it's not quite that strong, but when we have a really negative experience, we then just decrease our desire and thoughts about that food.
Mhm.
And I think the other piece that's really important is you can eat healthy foods quite comfortably.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so that's also something that's really important to understand about bariatric surgery is dumping isn't something that happens after every food.
no.
Also, dumping is totally predictable,
Oh yeah.
right? You can be like, if I eat this, this is going to happen. But if I eat
E-
this, nothing's going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not
Exactly.
really caught off guard with it.
No. Oh, absolutely not. And
Yeah.
I've learned over time what foods make me feel not so great and what foods make me feel great. And
Yeah.
my body, I just gravitate to those good foods. And, I still enjoy eating. It's just I eat different food now.
Yeah.
because you like the way that this new way of eating makes you feel and the energy you can have and the fuel for your body.
Right.
I
Right.
just a couple days ago saw something online that I think is so powerful, which is talking about how, food is kind of like crafted these days to reward our brain, not to fuel our
Oh
body.
yeah.
And so being able to make that shift of food can be, yes, enjoyable because I like the way it makes me feel and how it's fueling my body and all of these other things I'm able to do because of it.
Yeah. That's yeah, I think that's a really good point is that in general, when we're battling obesity, we're fighting against these food chemists. And they're chemists. They're not chefs or cooks or bakers or anything. They're chemists mixing chemicals. And they're using focus groups. And I think one thing that's really fascinating is, and they're smart people and they understand the science, and that's why they're so good at getting us to eat crap. But when GLP-1 started coming out, all of the food stocks went down. And I think that everyone's like, well, they're just not going to eat more, but it's different than that. And I think,
Mhm.
especially as we see more and more use of these medications, the usual tricks these food companies were using won't work if you're taking GLP-1s, and they won't work if you've had bariatric surgery. And so they're going to, anytime the rules change, generally the leader of the industry will change too. And so I think that's something else that's really going to be interesting to follow.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
love to see that happen because there's so much garbage out there and it's
Yes,
frustrating.
it really is. How about exercise? Are you able to exercise? What are you doing there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I walk with my husband and my mother-in-law a couple times a week. Um, I probably I get anywhere from about 14 to 20,000 steps a day.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, I started strength training. So I've been doing that in my bedroom. Because it's hard sometimes to get away, and I live out in the country now, so there isn't a gym very close.
Right.
So I walk my dog, I do my strength training, um, and yeah, like we'll just go and do things that require lots of walking. We just find, and my husband is very, very fit, and so we can actually do active things together, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I when I first saw you, I was like, how I barely remembered you, but as through this interview, I remember you. But the problem is my memory of you does not look like you right now. I really remember you kind of at 400 pounds now.
Yeah.
And you really are almost unrecognizable. Have you had that issue with people like being like, wait, Kelly?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
People, and I had my surgery in 2017. I moved to Texas in 2019. And so all of the people that I work with, they they didn't see me at 400 pounds.
Right.
So they're more used to it. But I'm in Michigan right now, and I
Mhm.
have seen people that I haven't seen in years, and they're like, you don't look anything the
Yeah.
same.
You're
Yeah.
like, "Mm,
Yeah,
How's that
right.
make you? Does that make you feel good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Yeah.
makes me feel amazing.
Yeah.
And I I I enjoy feeling good. I enjoy
Yeah.
feeling
You
amazing. And
deserve to feel good.
you deserve
yeah,
it." Yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for sharing, being vulnerable and opening up and sharing your story. I think it's so powerful, and so many people listening can relate to your struggles and your journey. So if anybody out there is maybe sitting on the fence or just getting started in this journey or not sure if they should take the leap or not, do you have any kind of golden nuggets that you'd like to share? Any advice you'd like to give to them?
Oh, I wish I had done this in my 20s. I wish I would have listened to Dr. Weiner the first time I was in his office because he wasn't wrong. Um, and I feel like I lost a lot of years being super obese. And so, again, hindsight's 2020, but I I'm glad I did my research. I'm
Yeah.
glad that I learned more about gastric bypass, and I wasn't nearly as scared because it's very different from what was happening in the 70s. Um, and how I feel is absolutely amazing. And I I wish I would have a longer period of time to feel that. Because how I feel now is just incredible. And I have a whole new life.
I love it. Yeah. I think your point about the research is so important too. And that's something, when I see new patients and sometimes people are like, well, my doctor sent me here, said I got to lose some weight. And what I found is that's okay. Let me run you through the nuts and bolts, or you could, go to Chat GPT and say, tell me how to lose weight. What are my options? And we'll probably have a fairly similar experience. But then I also have patients who've been like, I've watched these videos. I've done this research. I've been thinking about this for a long time. And here's some of the things. Here's what I know. Here's what's important to me. Here's some things I'm struggling with deciding about. And I find that the conversation we have in that situation is just at such a high level. And I have so much more confidence that this person is making a really good decision, that they've thought through everything, because this is a life decision, having bariatric surgery,
Absolutely.
who you marry, whether you have children, where you live, how many, what you do for a living, all of those things are life decisions that impact your life so much. And bariatric surgery is on par with that. And you need to give it that level of consideration. So I applaud you for all of that, all the research you did. And I think we look at your level of success here, we see it wasn't a straight line, but we see the one common thing through it was persistence and research. And I think those to me would be the two magic ingredients to weight loss success.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it really, steered my journey this way. And I have zero regrets. I, you know, but I want people to be educated because it's not the right decision for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's not.
absolutely.
Absolutely not. I feel these days I'm talking more people out of surgery than into it. Um, yeah. Especially with
It's
the
a
meds.
tool. It's not just a quick fix. It's a
Yeah,
tool. And if you treat it as such, you're gonna be way
yeah,
more successful, in my
yeah.
opinion.
It's part of the plan, not the plan. So
All right. Well, I'd say that pretty much wraps up our conversation. Again, Kelly, thank you so much for being here. And for all of those who are listening, thank you for being here and listening to the conversation. We would really appreciate it if you would share this episode with somebody that you think would find it valuable as well. And until next time, hope you guys take care.
see you next time.